שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. הנה מה טוב שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים. Let's do it one more time. This weekend, we celebrate Repro Shabbat, in which we are partnering with the National Council of Jewish Women and over 1,000 synagogues across our country as a way of bringing the whole Jewish community together to talk about what our tradition teaches about reproductive health, rights, and justice.
And when we study, we know reproductive freedom is a Jewish value.
One in 4 people who can get pregnant will terminate a pregnancy by the age of 45. That includes members of our own community for their own deeply personal reasons. So many important stories in our community go untold.
Our tradition not only permits the termination of pregnancy, but even requires it when the life of the pregnant person is at stake. And of course, kavod habriot, human dignity, and more broadly, building a just society, are ultimate Jewish concerns.
Our communities should be places where anyone who has or may ever terminate a pregnancy feels loved and welcomed. And our communities should be places where everyone can feel welcome to share their reproductive health stories without fear of shame or stigma. If folks wish to share, let us be a community that welcomes the sharing of personal journeys, whether that involves termination, fertility challenges, pregnancy loss, or any other experience.
With the fall of Roe v. Wade, 40 million people of reproductive age are now trapped in states hostile to abortion access. Those harmed most by abortion bans are Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color, BIPOC communities. People struggling to make ends meet, people living in rural areas, immigrants, disabled people, youth, and trans and non-binary people.
During a year when abortion access matters more than it ever has in many of our lifetimes, we here at Temple Shir Tikvah are committed to this work. On Sunday, March 19th, Connections will be continuing the conversation with a program and action facilitated by JALSA, the Jewish Alliance for Law and Social Action. We hope you'll be able to join in. It is in person only, but it will be recorded and made available to all.
And so we welcome you on this Shabbat, this cold and rainy February evening. It is so good to see all of you in the sanctuary, and so many of you joined us for dinner before the service. We want to say a special welcome to those who are joining online. We feel your presence here as well. And we continue by asking our Connections Committee members to come on up to light the Shabbat candles. And it's lovely to see your faces, those of you on Zoom who have your cameras on. Hello to you.
A minute behind the video.
And you'll find the blessing for lighting the candles on page 1 in your prayer book. You can light first. Yeah. Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto v'tzivanu le'adlek ner shall And we ask you each to take a stanza, prayer for reproductive freedom, and just speak it out as loud as you can. Hey, you know what? Why don't you come back to the, Brian, can we turn on one of these mics back here, and then we'll get a little more
back.
sound. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
May we always remember each person is created in the image of the sacred
Sounds
and
good.
endowed
It's just,
with the inherent right to autonomy and respect.
y'all leave if they're loaded.
May we create a caring and loving community and nation that reveres this dignity in each of us. May we understand our obligations to one another. We are all inherently holy and should be treated as such.
May we find within ourselves the collective will to create a just society in which reproductive justice, the holy right to own the personhood of one's own body, to have or not have children, to raise any children in safety and community is foundational.
May we endow each other with the strength, resolve, and courage we need as we walk together towards a liberatory world.
May we follow the leadership of those most impacted by the harms of reproduction oppression. May we listen and learn.
May our country become a piece of true liberty, a place of true liberty and justice for all. May our relationships with each other be ones of care and deep respect. May we walk together on the path of community as we work together to ensure truly accessible abortion care for all.
Amen. Thank you all. And we continue at the bottom of page 8. Romemu. Let us lift each other up. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Keep Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Keep Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho.
You turn to pages 11 and 12 for Lecha Dodi, preparing to welcome Shabbat into our sanctuary, into our souls. We'll sing stanzas 1, 2, 5, and 9. When we reach stanza 9, I'll gesture like this. It's an invitation to rise in body or in spirit. Turn to the back of the sanctuary and let that presence come to you, and also to greet our community members who join us digitally.
Pene Shabbat nekavela, oh Shamor v'zachor b'diburecha, hishli'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo l'tiferet v'litzilah. Lechandori lekrakala yalala yalala yalla pene Shabbat nekavela yala yala lechandori lekrakala yalala yalala yalla pene Shabbat nekavela oh lekrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor habaraka merosh mikedem nesuchav sof ma'aseh v'machshav achila lechandori lekrakala yalala yalala yalla pene Shabbat nekavela yala yala lechandori lekrakala yalala yalala yalla pene Shabbat nekavela oh hitoreri your light has come oref kumi ori shir dodi likakala yalala yalala yalla Tene Shabbat nekavela Yaila ila lechan dodi likakala yalala yalala yalla Tene Shabbat nekavela Oh boi v'shalom ateret balam Gam b'simcha u'v'tzohala Toch emuneh am segula Boi kala Lechan kala yalala yalala yalla Pnei Shabbat nekavela No woman can call herself free who does not control her own body. Margaret Sanger. And we remain standing in body or in spirit for the Chatzi Kaddish on page 15. Yitkadal ve'yitkadash shemei Rabba Ba'alma divarach hirutei ve'yamlich malchutei B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael Bagala Uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen Yehesh Rabba mevarach le'alam ulam me'almaya Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpa'ar ve'yitromam ve'yitnaseh V'yithadar, v'yit'aleh, v'yithalal, Shemei dekudesha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma Ve'imeru amen.
We continue on page 16, calling each other and ourselves home into this sanctuary of prayer.
Shekhinah, holy name. When I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah. Holy name, when I call on the light of my soul, I come home. Baruch Hu, dear one, Shekhinah, holy name, when I call on the light of my soul, I come home.
Teaching by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Zichrona Livracha. The emphasis must be not only on the right to abortion, but on the right to privacy and reproductive control.
Roll into dark into light. Night becomes day, and day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Boreon balayla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, vechoshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, and then day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Boreon balayla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, vechoshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Hillary Clinton, you cannot have maternal health without reproductive health. And reproductive health includes contraception, family planning, and access to legal, safe abortion.
Continue at the bottom of page 17.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
You may be seated. We continue on page 18 with the V'ahavta. Put your finger in page 20. We'll chant the first paragraph on page 18 and move directly to the second paragraph on page 20 as we remind ourselves that in response to the unity we sang of, we are commanded to fill our days, our nights, our comings, and our goings with acts of love, compassion, and justice.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Abortion is health care. Abortion is freedom. Abortion is bodily autonomy. A country without this human right is not a free country. H.R. Bellicosa.
Turn to page 102. Miriam's song, celebrating that moment when Miriam gathered the women together in a time of uncertainty to celebrate, to dance, have a party all night long. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang a song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam was a weaver of unique variety. The tapestry she wove was one which sang our history. With every strand and every thread she crafted her delight. A woman touched with spirit, she dances toward the light. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang a song. Woo! Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. When Miriam stood upon the shore and gazed across the sea, the wonder of this miracle she soon came to believe. Whoever thought the sea would part with an outstretched hand, and we would pass to freedom and march through the promised land. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang a song. Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. And Miriam, the prophet, took her timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her just as she had planned. And Miriam raised her voice in song, she sang with praise and might. We just lived through a miracle, we're going to dance tonight. And the women dancing with their timbrels followed Miriam as she sang a song. Woo! Sing a song to the one whom we've exalted. Miriam and the women danced and danced the whole night long. Access to abortion is a racial and social justice issue that disproportionately affects people of color, people in rural communities, and low-income people who already disproportionately face discriminatory barriers to access adequate health care. People of means will simply travel to states where they can get the care that they want. People of lower income and socioeconomic status will be forced to have babies that they cannot afford to take care of. As a women's health advocate, I pray for the day when women of all races and socioeconomic backgrounds will have the right to affordable and adequate health care, which includes the right to abortion if she so chooses. This is when our nation will live up to the promise of life and liberty for all. Karen Arrington, the founder of the Miss Black USA pageant.
With her prayers in our hearts, we invite you to turn to page 25 as we turn to the prayer, the Amidah. I invite you to rise and body your spirit.
Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tivtach. Na 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Teilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tivtach. Na 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Teilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tivtach. Na 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Teilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tivtach. Na 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Teilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tivtach. Na 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Teilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot Ve'imahot Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Lema'an Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Ve'ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye Hakol Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye Hakol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot Umidom Melach Melech Memit Umechayeh ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Salam shalom, peace, 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 salam shalom. May it come in our day. Salam shalom, peace, salam shalom. May it be so. Peace, peace, salam shalom, peace, salam shalom, peace, salam shalom, peace, salam shalom.
Turn to the Mishaberach on this night when we are spending so much time and energy and thought acknowledging that the reproductive health of people who can become pregnant is at stake, that we are in a post-Roe world, that there is unequal access dependent upon so many factors outside of a person's control. We pray the words, when the world is sick, can't no one be well, as our Mishaberach, acknowledging that In Massachusetts, we are lucky. But knowing that it is our job to walk until all are free. We will hear of those who are on our healing list tonight, hear their names said aloud here in our sanctuary. If you're joining us in our digital community, we invite you to use the chat function of the technology to add your loved ones' names to our prayers. And then, of course, for those here in the sanctuary, we'll have an opportunity to say the names of those you are praying for out loud.
We send healing of mind, body, and spirit to the 5 Michigan State University students who were critically wounded in Monday's attack, and all the others, even today, who we hear about, who are healing from senseless acts of gun violence in our country. And we pray for this healing of Aliza Stern-Geyer, Pat Urich, Peter Feynman, Alina Clayman, Sue Gum and Nan Owens, Diana Sanders, Anna Leah Kagan, Beatrice Fay, Jan Amsterdam, Alan and Joanne Travis, Marianne Demers, Jabari Williams, Kathy Grossman, Sonal Starr, Joyce B., Andy A., Paul P., and Gloria, Amaria Roberts, Nancy Alpert, Ayelet Bat Chava V'Her Shmuel, Debbie Gilman, Neil Daniels Midman, Anya Kabel, Sue Boardman, Sarah Kianowski, Debbie Sachs Buteau, Stanley Roth, and Kathy Nath. And if there are people you would like to add to this list, saying them out loud in our sanctuary, please raise your hand. Audrey.
Barbara Alfie.
Mercedes Linda.
All the poor people sitting in tents with no food in Syria and Turkey.
Andrew Silver.
Keith Corbett.
Robert Ansell.
Yeah, Laura.
Penny Haggerty.
Barbara Nussbaum.
People in the Ukraine.
Jay Shishki.
For all of these people, for all of the loved ones we hold in our hearts tonight, let's sing out these words. Second line, Ana Elna Rifana La, our first healing prayer found in the Torah, Moses' prayer for his sister Miriam. When the world is sick, can no one be well? And I dreamt we were all beautiful and strong. When the world is sick, can no one be well? And I dreamt we were all beautiful and strong. Ana Elna Rifana La, Ana Elna Rifana La, Ana Elna Rifana La, Ana Elna Rifana La. Let's put them together. When the world is sick, can no one be well? And I dreamt we were all beautiful and strong. Ana Elna Rifana just your part. When the world is sick, can no one be well? And I dreamt we were all beautiful and strong. When the world is sick, can no one be well? And I dreamt we were all beautiful and strong. Let's do it one more time. Ana elna rifanala. Ana elna rifanala. For some of us who are of a certain vintage and grew up in the women's movement, and were formed by the songs in those days. This song was a mishaberach of sorts, sung by the amazing songwriter Farron. I hope you'll sing along if you've never heard it before. There's God like and warlike, and on shines only some show, and there's sad like and mad like and had like we know. But by my life be I spirit, and by my heart be I woman, and by my eyes be I open, and by my hands be I whole. They say slowly brings the least shock, but no matter how slow I walk, there are traces, empty spaces, and doors of locks. But by my life be I spirit, and by my heart be I woman, and by my eyes be I open, and by my hands be I whole. You young ones, you're the next ones, and I hope you choose it well. Though you try hard, you may fall prey to the jaded jewel. But by your lives be you spirits, and by your hearts be you women, and by your eyes be you open, and by your hands be you whole. Listen. There are waters hidden from us. In the maze we find them still. We'll take you to them. Take your young ones. May they take their own in turn. But by our lives be we spirits, and by our hearts be we women, and by Our eyes be we open, and by our hands be we whole.
1992, Planned Parenthood versus Casey was argued in front of the Supreme Court. I was raised in Pennsylvania. I am the daughter of a feminist lawyer. And so you can bet I was loaded into the car to go march on the Capitol under a sign that read, "Chocoholics for choice." Which is to say that I've supported reproductive rights and freedom my entire life. It's been a part of my identity, a huge part of my identity, but it wasn't necessarily founded in my Jewish identity. It was founded in my family of origin, my relationship to my mom, my own sense of what it meant to be a feminist, but not necessarily the part of me that was rooted in my religious tradition or my cultural identity. But I think in the post-Roe era, it is more important than ever that if you identify as Jewish, you are able to tell the story of why reproductive rights are integral to our Jewish identity. And so tonight, I want to introduce you to some of the foundational texts that are the beginning and show the evolution of our relationship with this idea. A note about these texts. Some can be upsetting, and they tend to use the language of a pregnant woman. In the context of our contemporary understanding of gender, it is important to remember that while many cisgender women can get pregnant, not all can. And so too, some non-binary people, some trans men, some people whose gender identity is not reflected currently in our framework and our language, can also become pregnant. And so these texts are not meant to exclude them from the conversation. Let's start with the parsha we would be reading this very week. There's a reason Repro Shabbat is happening this week. And it's because we read Mishpatim, which is a bunch of laws. And we find these couple of sentences, okay, if I wander around, you know me in text. I start flinging, and it doesn't work well if I'm behind the thing. Yeah, let's light myself on fire. You'll all remember that. Remember the time? In Exodus 21, this week's portion, we read this. When men fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman, she's not part of the original fight. You have to imagine she's standing off to the side, and a miscarriage results, and no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined according to the woman's husband what he may exact from him. the payment is to be based on a reckoning. But for other damages that might ensue, so we're back to two men fighting, the penalty shall be life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, bruise for bruise. I'm going to ask you, for the sake of Shabbat, to, with that second part, it's probably not a good way to run the world. I think we all agree that on that point now. So let's leave that issue of whether that's a good system or not off. And thinking from the lens of reproductive freedom, or our understanding of what constitutes a life, what does this text say? This is a 2,500-year-old text. Yeah.
Just forgetting about the
Whether it's a good idea.
right, but a life for life means you would take the person's life who caused the miscarriage. Otherwise.
Right, so we have that it's excluded from that first category, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be written that way. Good. What else do we learn here? And or what questions do you have about this text? You have a question. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. What is the problem here? What we see is in the ancient world, the woman nor the fetus have their own value that is owed to them, right? So we're not talking, I'm not here to convince you that the biblical world was a feminist world, right? That is not what I want you to walk away with. Rabbi Cari lit herself on fire and said we're all feminists, right? That's not what I'm saying here, but what I am saying is that that a woman at this point is clearly still the property, right? Or in the household of the man who she is married to. There is a value to her, and there is a value to the fetus, but it is not the same, as Audrey pointed out, as the value of a life.
Is the woman considered a life?
The woman is considered a life.
She died, then the
Yes. So she is considered the value of a life. Her fetus is not. Good question. All right. Yes.
She doesn't even have standing to speak out for what she wants. It's what her husband wants.
Yes, she has, right. We are just absolutely not feminists, right? 100% happening. This is not our world, I hope. She doesn't have a say. He's going to be the decider of what the value would have been. But he can't push the value to be equivalent to the value of a life. That's excluded from this text. Yes?
At this time, when did the soul enter the baby? Wasn't it true that there was a belief that the soul did not enter the child for the fetus or whatever, for a certain amount of time? So therefore, it might be argued in biblical times that there was no life, there was no spirit.
So the question is that, I'm just going to repeat the question, but I'm not taking credit for your really important insight. The question of the soul, right? And if a soul when the soul becomes part of this fetus. And that's a great question because it's going to lead us to the next period of thought on this. Dan, can I have the next slide? I think it's this one. Okay. This is coming from the Babylonian Talmud. It's from about the years 200 to about the years 800. Okay? So we're significantly post the book of Exodus, and they ask exactly the question you ask. Okay, so what about this whole soul thing, and when does it exactly start? They don't give exactly satisfactory answers, but they give something. Yes?
But it's interesting because the 40th day is like 6 weeks, which is when they can hear the baby's heart.
So I think we have to repeat the comments. So the 40th day, the question is, when is that counted from? And is that the equivalent of when they say you can hear a baby's heartbeat in the uterus? And we're still not at soul here, right? They didn't put a soul into the fetus here yet, but at least we know they're not even understanding it as a pregnancy. It's mere fluid. It's not even a pregnancy. And I don't know, I read some math about this week that suggested this is actually closer to 8 weeks for all sorts of reasons about when they were counting from. So for the first 8 weeks of the pregnancy, according to the Talmud, the years 200 to 800, that's also a pretty big span, FYI, they don't even say it's a pregnancy for that first period, right? That's what that first text seems to indicate. And then, right, so what is it if it's not a pregnancy, or what is it in the period after the pregnancy, when the pregnancy has been realized, we're past fluid, but we're no longer, but we're not at childbirth yet? Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi's position, he's a big guy. Like, when he says it, most of the people tend to agree with him. He holds that the fetus is considered as part of its mother's thigh. Oh, God. Oh. So what is this according to the second text? What is a pregnancy from, let's say, that 40th day to childbirth? Part of the mother, right? It's a part of the mother. It's not an independent being. It's, according to the Talmudic understanding, they have a period where the pregnancy is considered fluid, and then they have a period where the pregnancy is considered part of the mother's bodily experience, not to be separated from it, right? Any comments about this, thoughts? Anybody seen these texts before? Yeah? Some of you have seen them? Raise your hand if this is your first time with these texts. Awesome. I'm sure it'll come up at dinner frequently. Good. So at this point, I think hopefully, we have seen that 2,500 years ago, there was an idea that there was a fetus, and that fetus belonged to the household, particularly the father, and therefore, if anything happened to it, payment had to be made to him, absolutely, to him. And then we see a further evolution of the thinking in Jewish thought, where the rabbis are sort of trying to figure out, okay, so what is that period? What's happening in that 9-month period, and how do we think about it? Have we seen anything that suggests that a fetus is the equivalent of a person? No. Okay, let's keep, oh yes, questions. Yeah, Melissa.
Going back to the first slide, at the end, it says that, the first statement, that the payment is based on reckoning. So how do they value this reckoning?
It's a financial, what they're saying is that's a financial. Oh, I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. That's a very good question. We'd have to do a whole bunch of research and see if this was ever actually, if we have any records that show it was put into place. That's a really great question. Yeah. My kid is going to be a brain surgeon. Right. Okay, Karen?
But this is just rabbi's thought.
Yes.
So this is not just an interpretation, not necessarily what's in the Torah.
This part? These two? Yes, the Torah is closed at this point. The book of the Torah is no longer being modified, and we are now in the rabbinic period, which, let's call it year 0 to 800, about then. And the rabbis are trying to recreate Judaism, because biblical Judaism is all about when we exist in the land. And they're rewriting all of it for now that we no longer are existing in the land.
Trying to tell someone who is looking at the Bible.
You want to go with Exodus?
Then this is just a religious interpretation rather than
Yes.
a way to convince people that this is what was in the Bible.
The first slide is biblical. Exodus is just straight up biblical. I don't think Talmud, straight up biblical, I'm not sure I've ever said before. Sometimes things just, I don't think the Talmud is going to convince somebody who's not from the religious tradition that it is. But what I think is interesting, or might be interesting to people of other religious traditions, is that you see an evolution and a growth of an idea where there's a seed of it in the Bible, and it is continued in the rabbinic tradition. And then you're going to see, we're going to keep going because I'm just mindful of time, and there were about 4 billion texts I could have pulled for today. I did not. But this is a rabbi who is from 1750 in Germany, okay, who discusses the case of an adulterous married woman and whether it is appropriate for her to be allowed to have an abortion. And he says, it appears to me to be appropriate to permit her to abort. And even in the case of a legitimate fetus, there is reason to be lenient if there is a great need, as long as the fetus has not begun to emerge, even if the mother's life is not in jeopardy, but only to save her from woe associated with it that would cause her great pain. 1750, and we have this idea that it's not just whether she's in physical danger, which it was super clear, but even more so if there is, or also if there is emotional cost to continuing the pregnancy, then it is permitted within the tradition for this. Yeah. Yeah. There are some incredibly hard words when you read these texts. And some of the texts I didn't bring you were, I couldn't imagine figuring out how to say in here. Not that they weren't interesting and didn't push it probably beyond where most of us expect, but just the pain of the text was too much to figure out how to bring to us. Yeah, Krishna.
Does legitimate fetus mean that the father of the fetus was married to the mother?
Yes, yes, it's a marital status.
I think that's all the word legitimate.
Yeah. So right. So they're talking about if the woman has had an affair, she can have an abortion. If she hasn't, but the pregnancy will cause her woe, she can have the abortion as well. Exactly. Yes. Oh, sorry. It's extremely enlightened. Tell me more about that.
Why? Because they're allowing a woman who had an adulterous affair to have an abortion and not experience all the scorn that she would encounter because she had an affair through an adulterous relationship.
So she would be saved a life of pain, right? And I think that what you're talking about is really in some ways what some of the quotes we heard today talk about understanding the responsibility and the cost of bringing a life into this world. And that the tradition seems to have a pretty rich understanding that once a child is born, there are responsibilities owed to that child and to the mother. And that if you cannot meet those responsibilities as a society, right, if they can't protect this woman who had an affair from the scorn she's going to experience, then there is the ability to not have a child be born into the world and instead to terminate a fetus. Dana.
How widely held this view was?
Well, we have a quote from one of the Orthodox rabbis in the 90s in Israel who affirms it, 300 years later. So it certainly became enough part of the tradition that it gets quoted 300 years later. An Orthodox rabbi, not like me.
So it's interesting to try to read this out whether this rabbi would have said that the choice was the woman.
Huh.
And I think it's pretty close because it's permit her. It's not saying permit the husband to decide or permit her. So that might, but the rabbi is still doing the permitting.
Oh, for sure.
It's not all the way to choice.
No.
It's not all the way to choice, but it's most of the way to choice.
Yeah. It's choice up to the rabbi's prerogative, right? So, sort of. Yeah.
Interesting too about as long as the fetus has not begun to emerge.
As long
it
as
could be very late.
Right. As long as the fetus has not begun to emerge is very late. And I will tell you that that's one of the texts that I didn't bring you, is a discussion of in childbirth, what is permitted and what is not permitted. So yes, and I think it speaks very much to your question of the soul. And keep in mind, traditionally, babies weren't named until the 8th day, right? They were entered into the covenant. They certainly had, well, I have heard horror stories of babies who died between birth and the 8th day, where more traditional communities have tried to, I think in my most generous interpretation, say that this isn't the loss of a baby because the baby hasn't been named and brought into the covenant. I think that is a total misunderstanding. I'm not defending it. And so there's this question of the soul. You have all of these interim periods within the community and the tradition that invite you to consider that question. I think, oh my goodness, you're all so involved and engaged, and there is an oneg. I will admit. But yeah, we're gonna Jeanette.
In 1750, it really begs the question in my mind: how safe would this procedure have been?
That's a question I can't answer. Yeah.
A lot of ethical questions just on that basis alone.
Yeah. We're going to read one more text. And this is by Rabbi Becky Silverstein. The discussion of who is permitted to eat on Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement, has much relevant wisdom to offer. Most Jewish people observe Yom Kippur by incorporating prayer into a set of rituals that include a 25-hour fast. But what happens if someone is ill and cannot fast on Yom Kippur? The Talmud invokes a verse from the biblical book of Proverbs. Lev yodea mar'at nafsho, or the heart knows the bitterness of its soul, to teach that the sick person is actually the expert who should make this decision. So Krishna, this speaks to your point a little bit. The text of the Talmud even says that nobody can possess more expertise on such a question than the sick person themselves. In this way, Judaism's principle of Lev Yodea Marat Nafsho authorizes as experts both pregnant people who want to end a pregnancy and trans people seeking gender-affirming care or the right to live as their true self. It demands that we honor the knowledge, that we honor the self-knowledge of those individuals. I'm going to let Rabbi Becky have the final words for us tonight. I would love during the oneg, if you want to talk more, if you want to wrestle on text. On another day, on March 19th, we have the opportunity to spend real time delving into these texts. But I wanted each of you here tonight, if you're joining us online, if this conversation comes up, I think in part, this is an issue of religious freedom. My religion suggests to me that I have authority on my body. And I would invite you, as we see these laws roll out, to remind yourself, Karen, just as you were saying, in conversation, not because I think you're going to convince somebody of a different tradition, but to feel steeped and supported that the Jewish tradition has a long history and of evolving ideas, all of which support reproductive rights and choice. We turn to page 44.
We are sending our condolences, our heartfelt condolences to Eric Nass, whose father, Marty Nass, died just yesterday at 96 years old. There will be a Zoom Shiva Minyan Monday night, February 27th at 7 p.m. And in this time of Shloshim, we are remembering Lois Lineal, Lisa Deutsch's beloved mother, and Emma Watkins. Yortzites for tonight include Herman Alexander, Arev's father-in-law, Stephen's father, Marlene Mallitz, Stephen and Arev's daughter-in-law, Philip Roth, Audrey Roth's beloved father, 38 years since he has been gone, Gertrude Baker, beloved grandmother of Dana Ansel, and William Blau, Paula Goldstein's father. And in this year of memory, we hold in our hearts Ken Blumberg, Janet Kendall, Henry Wolfson, Erwin Lebo, Helen Fine, Wynne Musgrave, Sue Papanek McHugh, and Bob Ruxin. And if there are Yortzites you're observing tonight, please raise your hand, those who are feeling close to you. Diane.
Daniel Seltzer.
John McLaren. Just want to put a Duffy into the year of memory thing.
My father, Alan Schwartz.
Well, since I missed the early winter services, it's a little non-traditional, but I want to remember my mother and father. My father died in 1975, and my mother died in 1997, and their yard sites were in December.
My father, Jack Dinsburg, it's on the Hebrew calendar next month, but it was really just last weekend.
Ellen Bogula died a year ago.
Alan Ramad, Cheryl Dobson.
Join our voices together, rising in body or in spirit, becoming a community of memory. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute. Bechaye chon uvyome chon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, amen.
Zichronam livracha. May their memories be a blessing. You may be seated.
And just a couple of announcements. On Saturday, February 25th, which is a week from tomorrow at 4:30. Please join in with our remarkable temple president, Amy Travis, in a temple-wide schmooze right here at the temple. And this is intended to be a relaxing, informal time to hang out together over delicious hors d'oeuvres and catch up with friends old and new. So that's at 4:30, a week from tomorrow, right here. Next Friday night is a totally text Shabbat with Rabbi Cari, starting at 7:30. So if you enjoyed this delving into text, please come right here in the sanctuary. I will sadly miss that service. I'll be in Israel visiting my youngest brother just for the week, but I know it's going to be an amazing service. And just so we all know, because this doesn't get a lot of airtime, on Sunday, that we have 4 Shir Tikvah families, including 5 teens, including Sherry Lieber, who are heading to Houston, Texas, with Bailey Starr and with Barry Glass. And they are going there to rebuild a house that is waiting for them that got destroyed in Hurricane Harvey. And they'll be gone this entire week, from Sunday until Friday. And they have this mission the house has been gutted, to get it ready for somebody to move in. And they'll be joining us at a service later in the spring to tell us about what that experience was like for them. Torah study takes place tomorrow morning at 10:30 in the Temple Library or on Zoom. And if you want more information about Torah study, please contact Aaron Boxer right over here. And any other announcements? Let us conclude singing the song Circle Round for Freedom. We will do Kiddush and Motzi down. Actually, we only have to do Kiddush because we did Motzi to begin our dinner. So if you get downstairs, feel free to just lift a glass and say Kiddush down there. And there's a beautiful oneg waiting for us. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
Shabbat shalom.
See you downstairs. Nice to see you back in action. People were really into it.
We're going to have a field day with the Jalsa people.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to, like, really love that.
Yeah. Aaron had his hand
Oh.
up.
I mean, so many people had their hands
I
up.
know,
was like,
I know. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's, I feel bad.
No, he's great. He's just one of the, I'm always with him though.
I know, because he's so wonderful.
Exactly. Yeah. What'd you think of that song?
The circle around?
No.
Yes, really, I want to, like, spend some time with it.
The failing song?
Yeah. I'd never heard all those texts. I do. If you email me, I'll email you. I'll send them to you all for sure. And unfortunately, there's going to be more in that folder. So some of the hard ones that I cut for a Friday night. So just I'm giving you a warning. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, sure. But you're going to get them all. It's all a handout for sure.
What I was going to say was that for the 17th, the one from 1750, when he refers to, but not if the fetus has emerged, it's probably not what he intended, but we can interpret that as being consistent with the viability standard.
Oh, interesting.
Which was the Roe v. Wade standard.
Right.
You know, I mean, he didn't know as much about medicine and.
Well, and babies weren't fetuses were not as viable as early as they are now.
But the viability standard actually evolved with time.
Right.
But anyway, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I mean, it's us putting our modern projections on the road, but nevertheless, that's worth interpreting it that way.
Yeah, it's really interesting.